Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time tuning in, I've got a great project in store for you. This is a truck, a 1984 C70 427 big block 5-speed manual transmission with a 2-speed rear end that I bought out of Princeville, Illinois for a total of $575. Now, I've paid more than that in shipping to try and get the thing here since I don't live very close to Princeville, Illinois. However, in total, what I've spent on this thing so far is just right around the $650 mark. And I'll do a little bit of recapping right after this of what I've done in the past, but for right now I'm sitting with it the same way that it is probably whenever I end this video, running and a great machine. But I had a lot of issues along the way. I rebuilt the carburetor, did a lot of work with the ignition system, put in a whole new distributor that's an HEI model, and really changed every fluid that I could. Now, when you hear $1,000 dump truck, I bet you're wondering, well, first of all, there's no bed on it. And second of all, the thing's far too big to be anything compared to a dump truck for a single axle. Well, that's where the next few episodes come in. In the future, I've got a dump bed sitting right over there that was my grandfather's of a 1950s year model GMC truck that I'm going to be retrofitting onto this thing, as well as shortening the frame by about 42 inches. This thing is going to be my main horse to try and be self-employed, hauling around mulch and gravel and hopefully building a trailer to go behind it to pull along another few pieces of equipment that I'm working on currently. So, without further ado, I just would like to welcome the newest member of the family. Well, as you can hear in the background, I got this thing hooked up to the F-250, charging up that interstate battery. This thing's been sitting for about 4 months between the time that I worked on it and now, and it hasn't gotten, well, I guess it hasn't gotten any prettier. It looks beautiful to me, but I guess to the untrained eye it looks like a hunk of junk. And by untrained I mean more sensible. But right now I'm just letting it charge up, dead as a hammer, but I finally got the buzzer going on. As you can see here, I'm a 6-foot individual, and this thing dwarfs me. We got the nice old gauge cluster, got our nice old turning signal, 5-speed transmission, 2-speed rear end, pneumatic park and brake, clutch, brake pedal, gas. Everything I can tell, this thing's going to be a great machine. Hopefully the radio can be replaced. I got an old 8-track player that I think still will work. But as you can hear, got the buzzer on. And she only does one rotation. That battery's deader than dead. It's just about needing to be replaced, but I'm gonna see if I can't get by today. So I didn't film it because I think, as you can see from the discoloration, that is not oil. That is because every single part of this carburetor leaks. The power valve on the inside plate right here most likely is shot, but especially the seals on both sides, as well as some problems with the choke, which was to be expected because I knew that was happening. This thing is junk. I got it running just long enough for the air brakes to come to 60 psi, which was just barely good enough for the brake release to occur. So I drug it over to right next to my shop, and what I'm going to do right now is take care and remove the carburetor, and hopefully with the rebuild kit I can get that thing put back together and working soon enough. Heavy. Nice varnishy feel. And here we are, a soon-to-be much more functional carburetor. So here we have a bag of all the components you'll need, or I guess I'll need more so. So I'm just going to probably do a little bit of a time lapse of me taking this thing apart and reassembling it. There will be some cuts. I have never rebuilt a carburetor like this before. There's going to be some times where I need to take a break and just figure some things out. I'm not going to act like she's perfect. Far from it, at least to the point that I want to be. But she does run a lot better than it ever has before. I'm still having issues with tuning, but I believe, as you'll hear, it'll at least idle once it has some heat in it. My main culprit is I'm still waiting on some vacuum hose to come in. I don't have the vacuum advanced on the distributor all the way back there hooked up to the carburetor, which, using a diaphragm, advances the timing based on how much vacuum the engine is pulling, which is pretty much a simple explanation for, let's say you're sucking on a straw. If you had a little piece of rubber at the end of that straw, it's going to pull in a slight bit when you suck on it. It's the same principle, but instead of you causing the action, you have the motor, as it draws in air, is creating a vacuum. And that is being used to articulate a lot of different systems, especially back when these were mostly mechanical. And this thing's all mechanical, except for the HEI, but that's pretty much just a coil over top of the distributor instead of a point system where you have a separate coil. Squirt. I can smell out of the exhaust that it's running rich, using quotations there, because in all actuality it could be running lean, but the delay in timing could cause it or smell like it's running rich. But I'm going to set up and finally do what I've been needing to do. That right there is the main air tank. It's got air brakes. I'll kind of go through those. But you see right under there, I'm going to go ahead and change the oil. It's been needing it for a long time, and hopefully the amount of sludge I get out of there is minimal. Regardless, though, I've got additive and molybdenum that I'm going to put in there, as well as in the future I'm going to drop the pan and put a new gasket on it. The engine's very tight. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. Even the compressor builds pressure extremely quickly. However, it hasn't had its oil changed probably in 5,000 at least miles, and I've got a good layer of fuel on top of it from me cranking it over and pouring fuel down the intake to try and get it started for a good long time. So as you can see, this thing's been up in Illinois for a long time and is a delight. That fitting right there goes to the compressor. Compressor shares the same oil as the engine. There's an outlet and an inlet, and if I'm not mistaken, which I hope I'm not, since that doesn't seem to be a high pressure line, that's the inlet, the return side.
which still has a little bit of pressure to it, but not nearly as much as the inlet towards the pump. So you can see, filter has not been changed in a good long while. This thing's been working out in the fields. It used to be a fertilizer truck, and now hopefully it'll be a dump truck. So it definitely has not had an easy life to be considered. The reason I want an oil pan gasket is it seems to be mostly oil pan related. It doesn't go up the side of the block, and it pretty well is contained just right underneath this thing. But you get a little bit of that original color, which is something I would describe as kind of a baby blue. And I hope that a little bit of it still has that original color to it, because it's a very, very interesting scheme to me. Right above me is a transmission in all of its lunchboxy glory. And that big hose is feeding into your air tank. Now you got your U-joint, greasable. There's 4 of them. I'm going to omit one. I'm going to shorten the frame down. If you can see, just barely, that ridge right there is where it was cut and extended on. Further down there, see it just right there. That other ridge is where it was extended a total of 6 foot, making it a 13-foot long bed after its original 7 was chopped. Now, it struck me as odd because 7 foot seems like nothing, but when you think about air brakes and the fact that it most likely has capability to hook up to the air brakes of a trailer, it could have been a semi. A gas-powered, just lot pusher. Probably need to drop the transmission or replace the clutch eventually. It definitely doesn't grip well, but that's a job for another time after I figure out if this thing actually is gonna want to cooperate with me. But overall, definitely is not bad, especially for coming from Middle Illinois. Cab has taken the worst beating, so you can see it's wanting to rust out pretty good, but it's slung so much oil, and because of the air brakes, those need to be lubricated as well. All that dark spot up there is all grease, so it's kept itself well preserved, which I'm very appreciative of. It does not feel good, feels kind of gummy, which might be just the seal on the outside of it. And pan shot. Oh Christ, it's all fuel. As you can see, design flaw. That's draining right onto that center linkage sway bar, and nice and black. Might have to snag in here. That's why I came prepared. There we go. That's much more than what's supposed to be in it. Even though I checked the dipstick, I think there's been enough fuel added that until I blended it, couldn't really tell. I'm going to admit to my venial sin. As you can see, that's the gasket right there, that black O-ring. I'll never do this as an extended fix. It won't work for long, if it does at all. Well, now that we've got old oil out, now I'm taking the filter off, I'm one of the kooks that is very, very, very adamant about pre-filling filters. When this is dry and you haven't had any oil added into it, that engine is running without oil, and something this size, it could be a whole minute before it builds enough pressure to fill it all the way. So just as a word of warning, if you are changing your oil, always pre-fill the filter. If they're horizontal and you can't really get any amount of oil in them, I still would recommend putting a dab in there just to at least get the cloth that the filter is made out of damp.
Clean oil going in. The day has finally arrived. This thing's idling on its own finally, and even though it's not set perfectly, I've got the vacuum line unhooked. With a little bit of finagling, I can get this thing to idle on its own. And just like that, she's running the best I've ever seen it. I think once I get that vacuum line hooked up and adjust on the needles and seats in the metering plate right down there beneath that red cap, she should be all ready for the road. Then I just have to shorten the frame and put the dump bed on it, and we'll be in business. Still a little bit smoky, but she's running good. She's got like 90 PSI oil pressure, which is pretty crazy to me. And just sitting there humming away. Best $600 purchase this side of the Mississippi. Well, she's just about in running quality. A little bit boggy. Just adjust the timing. I don't see nothing going wrong so far. Doing a bit better as far as mixing's concerned. It's a little bit high as far as RPM's concerned, in my opinion, but it's running strong. I think it's time for a test drive. Well, that concludes the first episode. As you can see, we got it running decently at that. It's got a little bit of a problem with, I believe it's overheating, so that could be a thermostat issue or it's running lean. I wouldn't doubt that I've got it tuned improperly somewhat, but I'm gonna keep on cracking into that while the next video is coming along, I should say. Today I got a lot more projects to do, and hopefully a lot more coming up that you guys will see. I'll have something up about the dump bed that I am working on to put on the back of this, but this week I need to go, since it's running good enough, get the title transferred into my name, and then I can keep on continuing with this. Because for $650 or so that I put into it so far, I believe this is a great working machine. All I need to do now is spend a little extra time and money to shorten the frame, fix up that old dump bed, and use a lot of the spare parts that my grandfather had laying around the farm. So if you'd like to see any more, please hit that subscribe button, because I guarantee you every single video and every single project will be greater and better than the last. So thank you again for watching, and I can't thank you enough for all the support that I've been having. Take care of yourselves.